There is a point there in Daniel 9 that is interesting. So that's a prediction of a rebuilding of the temple after destruction. After 69, that's 483 years, one short. So you're left always with that final 7-year period. Here's a key point. His end will not work for 70 AD. If you're looking at 70 AD, that was Titus who did the destroying. He didn't come to his end in those events. He lived another 18 years, in fact, way beyond that. It won't work for Titus. So we've got articles at our site showing that his end is the correct translation there. That's the end of that final king who is operating in the final 7-year period. The last 3.5 years of which are the Great Tribulation, at the end of which he comes to his end with the destruction. So whatever that final abominable thing that he flies on, I don't know. There are passages in Psalms where God is flying on the wings of angels, so maybe it's some sort of parallel there. I don't know. This is stuff we don't know yet. But what I gave you there would be classical futurism. That's the view of the early church fathers too. The early church fathers were reading those 70 weeks, very much as we described them there, 69 with the last 7 years left. I think it's the right reading, and one of the reasons for that is that his end will not work for Titus. That's key. His end will come with a flood. That doesn't work for Titus. He lived another 18 years and died in natural death. It must, therefore, apply to the future. And you know why it must apply to the future? Because Jesus said, immediately after the tribulation caused by that abomination of desolation, immediately after, Mark's version 13:24 says, in those days after that tribulation, cosmic signs. Now, if you're really able to imagine cosmic signs in 70 AD, go for it. But I say you're dealing with language in a dishonest way. Words have meanings. The sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light. This is day of the Lord stuff from the Old Testament. Parousia, if you think the parousia happened in 70 AD, there's a term for that. You'd be called a preterist. Well, if you think the preterist view is right, then you're going to have to say the second coming was in 70 AD. Then that means the resurrection must have happened in 70 AD. There's a word called rapture used in American Bible conversation. You must immediately ask people, what do you mean by rapture there? Because what they mean now is a pre-Great Tribulation rapture. That comes from Dallas Theological Seminary and dispensationalism. I'm against it, this part of it, where they say that before that final 7-year period, or perhaps in the middle of it, both versions are out there, but let's say before this terrible time of trouble, Jesus is going to come back and resurrect the faithful dead and rapture the living Christians so they don't have to go through that period of 3.5 years. That's called the pre-tribulation rapture. That, from our angle, is completely false. It's not there in Matthew 24 at all. What? In Matthew 24? Did Jesus forget to mention this resurrection before the Great Tribulation? I think obviously not. No. I want to hasten to comfort you with this. There's only one second coming. Only one parousia. Guess what? The seventh trumpet is the same as the last trumpet. The seventh trumpet in Revelation, I think, is the last of the series of 7. And it's the same as the seventh trumpet, last trumpet, same thing in 1 Corinthians 15. Not that complicated. Now, there is a rapture event in the Bible, but not the noun. There's no noun rapture, much less pre-tribulation rapture. There is a verb rapture. I won't read it even in Matthew 24. 1 Thessalonians 4 says we're going to be caught up to meet the Lord as he appears. That's the verb rapture. There is a rapture, catching up, no noun, much less pre-tribulation rapture. But the verb rapture is there in 1 Thessalonians 4. We don't want you to be ignorant. What, Paul, you're so intellectual. Come on, give us some good stuff. We don't want you to be ignorant. And so we as apostles, Paul is saying, are going to explain how this works. We don't want you to be ignorant about those who are fallen asleep in death. Why then are your friends talking about persons having passed on and passed away all the time? They didn't pass away anyway. They went down into Hades, Sheol, the grave, and that's where they're sleeping now. That's another subject. So we don't want you not to know about this. Jesus died and rose, you get it? What happened? He went down before he came up. That's clear. He died and rose. In the same way, Jesus is going to bring with him those who belong to him at his coming. How does that happen? He goes on to explain. He doesn't stop right there, because he might be misunderstood. We who are alive, Paul includes himself. He doesn't know whether he would be alive, but that's corporate we Christians, whoever they are at the time. We who are alive and remain until the parousia. This rapture event, please notice. He talked about being caught up. That's the rapture event, is called the parousia. So to your friends who believe in a pre-tribulation rapture, you say, why are you believing in two parousias? Oh, well, we don't really think it's two. It's one split into two, they'll say. No, it's only one parousia. This very rapture section, this is their favorite section of Scripture, 1 Thessalonians 4:13 and following. That very passage talks about the parousia, we who are left and remain until the second coming, the one second coming, post-tribulational second coming of Jesus. It's obviously not a pre-tribulation rapture. It's called the parousia there. And what clearly happens is that Jesus appears in the sky at his one parousia. And with all distinguished visitors, you go out to meet that distinguished visitor and you escort him in the direction which he's going. What's the direction which he's going? He's coming back. He's not going away. He's coming back to the earth. So we will be caught up to meet this distinguished emperor, king of the future kingdom, as he comes down. And we will then escort him. We do the U-turn, get it? Not he. We do the U-turn and escort him in the direction which he's going, which is the earth, because his feet will stand in that day on the Mount of Olives in Zechariah 14. His feet, Messiah's feet, representing Yahweh. His feet will stand in that day on the Mount of Olives. I can tell you that's a geographical area, place. So I hope it's clear. You go out to meet the Queen if she comes to tea with you in England, if she were to be generous and gracious enough to come to tea with you in England. You go to the end of your drive and escort Ma'am, that's the Queen, in the direction which she's going. This is very clear once you see it, but once you get taught this wrong, it's very hard